On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, we'll talk about why Saturday's loss to Boston, a 3-point loss down to the wire, was more than just an L in the L column. We'll explain what we mean by that when we come back and get things started right here at Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. What's good, D?
Oh, man, the start of a new week, man. Start of a new week. All is good. All is good.
Yeah, it is. You tired?
Well,
It's
tired?
the start of a week. How are you going to be tired to start, right?
Yeah, well, we got a busy week, man. We got games taking us through Saturday? 4 games this week.
Yeah, I
Starting
know.
with Miami tonight. So yeah, I can see where things might get a little tiring, especially after an exhausting game that was on Saturday night, which we're going to talk about. But before we get started, we want to welcome everybody. You are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia. That is Keith Pompey from theinquirer.com, Sixers beat writer extraordinaire that he is. We thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Well, Keith, a 3-point loss and a thriller on Saturday night at the Center in South Philadelphia, 110-107, courtesy of Jason Tatum's three-pointer, leaving the Sixers with just 1.3 seconds left on the clock. After a timeout by Boston to draw up the play, leaves the Sixers with a gut-wrenching loss in that one on Saturday, snapping a 5-game win streak. We'll get into that, start with that one, and talk about why the L in the L column means more than just that one loss in the column. We'll also get into a little bit later, once again, because it reared its ugly head again on Saturday, and that was the Tyrese Maxey, DeAnthony Melton angle of this whole thing when it comes to the rotation and the starting role and roles in general for Doc Rivers' team. And finally, we'll step into the Miami Heat, who visit Philadelphia tonight as the first game of the home and home Sixers in Miami on Wednesday. All right, Keith, you were there. I was there. So were 20+ thousand people in that building. And it was electric, man. Sixers up by as much as 15 points. Looked like they were finally going to do it. It's never one of those, okay, they're going to do it because they're up 15. It just looked like they had a different pep to their step in the game. But as we know, Boston can do, and like we've seen the Sixers do against other good teams, Boston came back. They eventually won by 3. It was a controversial play at the end, not because Jason Tatum made the shot, but more of the defensive change that was made there to with the substitutions after the timeout. DeAnthony Melton on Tatum in the backcourt. They give him the ball and had a running start, off of Marcus Smart having a running start from that backcourt, dropping the ball off to him. He did a step back, made the shot from the top of the key. Tough shot, but you're talking about an all-star player, an MVP candidate, and Jason Tatum that can certainly do so. But first and foremost, man, what did you make of the game? What did you make of that play? What did you make of the defensive change where Jason Tatum was pretty, off in that game? And a lot of that was due to Tobias Harris and his defense, a little bit of Jalen McDaniels when he was in the game. And he got the ball at the end, ended up with 18 points, hitting the game winner for them. So what did you make of the Saturday's game? What really stood out to you, and why this was more than just an L in the loss column?
Listening to you talk, it basically, I think it's one of those things. So many things went wrong in this game 2 days ago. I mean, so many things. I mean, the fact that you pointed out, Tobias Harris did a really good job on Jason Tatum. And the fact that they felt like in that particular moment with the game on the line, you're going to go with a guy who's 7 inches shorter than him and put him, a DeAnthony Melton, talking about on who's 6'2", going up against the 6'9" Jason Tatum, and you thought that he was going to be able to make a stop when Tobias Harris was making this guy work, right? To me, that stood at one of the things that stood out. Secondly, I mean, for the Sixers, I think they would have been better off losing by 10 points as opposed to 3 points. Because when you think of the 3 points and you talked about this whole thing being electric, it camouflaged a lot of stuff. It gave false hope. Before we talked about it, you grew up, you come from a basketball family, your cousins, your one cousin plays in the NBA. I mean, y'all are basketball people. You know that when you're watching a game, when one team, no matter what the score is like, they're imposing their will. They're not running plays. They're just beating the team. And that's what we saw. I mean, you saw Boston basically having its way with the 76ers. They were picking out people like, oh, George Niang's in the game. We're going to go after him.
Right.
They're going to bring Shake Milton in here. Oh, okay. DeAnthony. Maxey. It was kind of like, Roxborough playing, playing like some suburban school that you never even heard of. But your coach is like, look, we got to play somebody else the next game, and they may be in the stands. So we ain't running no plays. We ain't giving them nothing to scout. We just going to go out there and beat them because we got better players. And to me, that's what it was all about. So when I saw that stuff, yes, I saw that it ended up a 3-point game, but there was nothing in my mind that let me say that the Sixers are on the level as the Boston Celtics. Nothing. They stopped going to Tobias. There was times where James was over dribbling. Joel, he only had 3 turnovers, but some of those turnovers came at the wrong time. It just, to me, it was just Boston's a better team, and the Sixers just don't seem to be on that level.
And just for the record, playing for Roxborough like I did for all my years in school, we did beat some of those teams, so it's okay.
No, what I mean is,
I know what you meant.
I'm not being a knock at Roxborough saying, okay, y'all playing Gratz when Gratz was all that.
Yeah.
What I mean is, I'm talking about y'all playing a team that that y'all can beat.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like one of those things where your coach was like, yo, we're not running our plays today.
Yeah. We're not going to show anything. Yeah.
We ain't going to show anything. Yeah, we're going to be real vanilla. Yep.
So a couple of things for me. One of them being that what we mean by the whole L thing, just down 0-2 in the series already and losing in 2 different fashions, losing in the opener in Boston, and it was 129, 117, something like that for the opener. Then they lose 106-99 in that second game with the reserves playing and doing their business against the Sixers. Jason Tatum off again in that game. Jaylen Brown breaks his facial fracture. He had to leave the game early, and then you were already without Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and Robert Williams. So Grant Williams, Blake Griffin, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, they beat you. Sam Hauser hitting a couple of shots in that when they beat you. So the Celtics have already shown that they can beat the Sixers, and they're always confident on the floor and with any lineup that is out there, even if their star players are not having their way like we've seen those guys have. And I bring that up because what it means is the Sixers are good enough, Keith, and I'm sure you agree with me, and like the listeners and the viewers, that the Sixers are good enough to be a team in the top 4 as we wind things down. Even with the rough schedule that they have a chance to be in the top 4. So at some point, they're going to have to play Boston and or Milwaukee in the playoffs. And while we haven't seen Milwaukee a bunch yet this season, we'll see them a few more times throughout the rest of the schedule here with the 23 games that they have on the schedule. Boston has already shown that, again, that they're not afraid of the Sixers. And with that game last night, even if the Sixers would have won, who knows? Boston will probably still feel very confident. However, for the mental side of things for the Philadelphia 76ers against the Boston Celtics, they needed that one last night. And I understand Doc Rivers pointed out pregame, hey, this is just a regular season game. It doesn't mean much when it really counts in the playoffs. But if we were to look at a 7-game series, people will probably look at it, the Sixers, and say, you know what, they're only going to win 1 game, and they're not going to win a lot of games in the series. It's not going to be a tough out for the Boston Celtics, and that's why Saturday night was important. So now you're trailing in the series 3-0 with 1 game to play. You already lost the season series. If there was a tiebreaker, you lose it because they've already taken that. There were a lot of variables that went into this one for the mental side, the standings issues, the percentages and all that comes with it if there was a tiebreaker. And then in the end, if you got to the playoffs, I don't think a win late in April is going to do anything to help you change how Boston feels about you if they see you in the 7-game series. By the way, that would start in Boston. So that's why that meant more than just a typical L in the loss column. It meant a lot in terms of the mental part and what this team will have to overcome to beat this Boston Celtics team. It's not the end of the world, but it was certainly something to play off of after beating Memphis the way you did on Thursday, riding a 5-game winning streak, getting this one, knowing you had to go on the road against some tough opponents. Also, this one was a tough one for the Sixers to drop. That's pretty much where it is for this team after that loss.
And can I add something? Like, 'cause I'm gonna be honest with you. When I was in the media room when Doc made that comment, like, "Oh, if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose." When I heard that, I said, "Oh, wow, he doesn't think they can win." Right. I mean, that was my initial reaction. If he believes that they could win or not, I mean, that was my reaction, because typically we've been in there when Doc's like, "Yeah, we know we could beat this team," or something like that. And when he said that, it was kind of like, I took it like, this guy softened the blow, because he knows that the people in the city are going to be upset if they lose this game. This is a rivalry game. This is a statement game. And if they lose it, it's just one of 82 on the schedule. Nah, bro. This was like the number 1 team. Y'all were like one of the hottest teams in the NBA. So when he said that, honestly, I was like, yo, he think they're going to lose. Like, he doesn't think they can win. So to me, that was like, I mean, we saw it. Like, they didn't look like they were the better team, you know?
Yeah, they did for a little bit, and then Boston came back, punched at them. The Sixers countered with a punch and took a lead again into that third quarter. But then once again, and they had some dynamic plays. You saw the shot that Joel made. You saw Tyrese Maxey, who had an off night, but he had a big basket there late in the fourth quarter to be able to put them in front. And so many things. Joel was tremendous. He was really good. I thought he hit a tough baseline turnaround jumper to cut the lead to 1. But then I also thought he followed that one up by getting too caught in the moment of being a franchise player, where he had a couple of people running at him and he forced a shot down our end of the floor, Keith. And I thought he should have passed the ball off. And you mentioned Tobias Harris not touching the ball only 4 times in the second half after having a very good first half with his defensive play on Jason Tatum and others for the 76ers. Just a tough loss for the Sixers on Saturday. But it doesn't stop there. The Tyrese Maxey, DeAnthony Melton part is also a big part of the conversation, Keith, here, not just for Melton's defense on Tatum at the end, but also because he seems to be struggling on the offensive end, and it has been carrying over from game to game. We'll talk about their dynamic, what needs to happen. Yes, we're bringing it up again because Maxey only had 8 points off the bench in a game that they needed more from him in that type of environment. We'll get into that next right here, Locked On 76ers.
Let's talk about prize picks, right? Tonight, I'm taking Luka Doncic to score more than 26.5 points. LeBron James to have more than 7.5 rebounds. Kevin Durant to have less than 6.5 assists. And Steph Curry to have more than 3.5 3-pointers made, right? What the thing about it is, the thing that I love about prize picks and the thing I love about this format is because what you do is you take certain players, and when you were playing, you're basically betting against the projection. And it's just you and the projection. It's not you and someone else. And the good part is you can pick anywhere from 2 to 6 players. And it's like I said, it's all about, will they score more or less than the prize pick projection? So that's what I like. I also like that you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against the other people. Like I said, it's just you and the projections. So entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. I mean, it's very easy. It's safe and fast withdrawals. And what you do is you download the PrizePick app or you go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code locked on. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you 100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you 50. Don't forget to enter the promo code locked on at sign up for an instant deposit match up for $100. I'm telling you, do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. 23 games left on the season. And Keith, it seems like when you make a change at some point during the campaign, you have some things figured out. Doc Rivers and the staff decided to keep D'Anthony Melton in the starting lineup, bring Tyrese Maxey for some punch offensively off the bench. And while we look at the defense from D'Anthony Melton, you alluded to it in the first segment. They've been going at him quite a bit in these last few games, and also being very productive. They're having some positive results in these games against D'Anthony Melton. Doesn't mean he's not a good defensive player. Just means that it's not working at the moment where he's shutting guys down opposite him for his assignment that night. What has to happen here, man? 8 points from Maxey. I think D'Anthony Melton hit 2 threes there in the third quarter. And as you and I, it's funny because we were walking out of the media room as third quarter was starting, and he had an opportunity for an open shot and he missed it. And I looked at you and I'm like, he's got to make that shot. He has to make that shot as we were walking back to our seats. And he did make a couple of more as we were walking to our seats. It just so happens that the length of the walk and plays happening. Of course, some points are going to be scored. But Keith, the offensive production from D'Anthony Melton, coupled with the fact that his defense has not been as sharp as it was in the when he was out there showing his worth that way as a two-way player. And then Maxey is so up and down right now as an offensive player. I don't know if it's because he's not getting the ball enough, if it's because he's coming off the bench and that's affecting how he's doing things with that second unit, even though one starter is oftentimes on the floor with him, Tobias Harris. Something has to give here, Keith. What is it?
You know, it's one of those things, and believe me, I get it. And I wrote about this in yesterday's paper, yesterday's Inquirer. I still think that Maxey has to come off the bench. And the reason why I'm saying that is unless you got somebody else who's shown that they can go out there and get buckets for them, then you got to keep them in that role right now. I mean, I just don't see it. Now, here's the problem. The problem is, as bad as Melton is on the defensive end lately, as bad as he's been, he's better than Maxey. And we remember how bad it looked when Maxey was in that starting lineup defensively, how everything was out of kilter. Now, you can do some other things now. If you say that I don't want to go with Melton is struggling, well, then maybe Jalen McDaniels. Let's see if he can go in the starting lineup and what he can do and try to flip-flop him and Melton for a little bit until Melton gets his mojo back. But see, the thing about it is like if you have Maxey in that starting lineup, which is also an option, I feel like you got to think long and hard about PJ Tucker continue to start because you're going to need somebody out there on the perimeter. Maybe you have to probably get a three-guard starting lineup to where you have somebody who can make some stops, right? You may have to, right? Here's the thing. If you go out there and you decide that I got to bring Maxey in the back in the starting lineup, well, you better go hard and go hard after Will Barton. Because you need somebody who's going to be a mercenary, come off the bench and get buckets. Now, here's another problem that I got to pinpoint, and I'm sorry for taking up most of the time.
Yeah, go for it.
But the problem yesterday was that Maxey couldn't get comfortable because they weren't because Joel wasn't passing them the ball. He would come in there, like you said, and it's like he staggered with a starter, and I felt like he wasn't in rhythm because he's standing around watching, right? And it's like you got to incorporate him more into it, because it looked like it got to a point where how Tobias Harris used to look. When you get the ball, then you like hurrying up and you rushing shots, you doing crazy other things. I just felt like there was really no rhythm for him until he got in the fourth quarter. I believe, what was he, like 1 for 4 shooting through 3 quarters? Like, I mean, this is one of your leading scorers, man. So that's where I stand on that whole thing.
Yeah, and again, I never said I didn't understand the balance of it. For the people who have heard me say it a number of times, keep Tyrese Maxey in the starting lineup. I get it, I understand it, but I also look at it too. If it's not going to be, to your point, Keith, of what you're saying, you're not getting a defense, number one, that you want from Melton in that lineup. Number two, he's not giving you the points, and then if you're not getting the points that you want from Maxey, he averages 20 points a game. So if you're getting 8 to 10 to 12, and that's just simply not enough, offsetting that with what the opponent is getting, his matchup, whatever it might be, is it that much worth of a risk to have that happen while he's coming off the bench instead of being in that starting role where he's more comfortable with those guys getting those shots? Now, I know Embiid's going to get his. You still got to find shots for Harris, and James Harden is going to get his. PJ Tucker will just pick up the scraps whenever the ball finds him and have his opportunity. Tyrese Maxey is a scorer. And yes, he can be a scorer off the bench. For whatever reason, though, it's not working consistently enough. His 20 points on average was a 20-point average while he was still with those starters and figured it out that way. That's why I didn't like it then, and I still don't like it now. So to your point, the Will Barton thing, I've never been the biggest Will Barton fan, but it makes sense for this team right now because, as you just talked about, there is no other scorer coming off the Sixers bench. There is no other player that can really create his own and get his own going without having to rely on his teammates. Will Barton, we at least have seen in the past where that was who he was, and we'll see if they, in fact, make a run at him to bring him in late to add to this group for the postseason. They have to do it by what, before March? Well, he's good though because he was released before March 1st, right? Yeah. So he should be good to go.
But now you got to sign him before March 1st.
Okay. All right. So we only have 2 more today and tomorrow. They have to have him locked in before Wednesday, and in order for that to happen. Yeah, some more tough decisions. And it's crazy because we're talking about one loss after they've had a 5-game winning streak. They're still 39-20. They're 19 games over 500, still in third place. They're still in a really good spot. But one loss can tell a lot when you see things play out, as you talked about, you watching the game for so long, me watching it, our viewers, our listeners watching it for so long, understanding the game. There can be one little thing that make you really scratch your head and say, all right, this is going to be a problem later on down the road when it matters for this team. So, all right, our final one, Keith, coming up here. We got to talk about the Miami Heat. They are right now fighting to stay in the top 6. They're out of the top 6 right now, and they're having their own troubles. But with that said, they're dangerous. They're dangerous enough because Jimmy Butler and those guys just recently lost, and Butler simply said, I'm tired. I'm tired of losing. We need to figure this stuff out, and we need to figure it out fast. So we'll talk about them front end of a home and home with the Sixers tonight at the Center. We'll get into that next right here on Locked On 76ers. But I got to tell you, as we approach and just mentioning today and Tuesday, the final 2 days of February, we're getting into the month of March, and we're getting to the spring season in all of our lives. And if you're looking to make sure you maintain good health, you want to eat right, and when sometimes you want to have a little cheat day and you have a little snack, looking for something delicious, got to be a treat, right? Well, you don't want to fall for all the fat and the calories in any particular thing that you go for. You got to try a Built Bar. And what make Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% chocolate. We all like chocolate, right? Well, real chocolate, 100%. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And as we've been telling you for so long, you have to go to built.com. Well, you can still go to built.com, but they've also made it a little bit easier if you're out there making your rounds at the local stores. And that is, you can now hit the local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. How about if you're close to Sam's Club and you need to make a quick run, you can go in and grab a 13-bar box with the hit flavors brownie batter and churro. They have a lot for you in both of those stores. Go check them out. It's much easier. But if you still need to lean on built.com, they are always there for you. Sam's Club, Walmart, your place to go to next. You'll thank me later. All right, welcome back. Locked on 76ers. Keith Pompey. I'm Devon Givens. All right, Keith, Sixers and the Miami Heat. 2 games between these two teams back-to-back, Monday and Wednesday, in Philadelphia on Monday, in the Miami Heat's arena on Wednesday. How you look at this one, man, with this team, Miami, they just don't look like themselves, but they're still in the playoff mix. They still do have all-star Bam Adebayo. Jimmy Butler is still there. Tyler Hero, we know he can score in bunches. How are you looking at this matchup with them? Is it more about the matchup of the Miami Heat, or is it more about the Sixers and making sure they snap out of it real quick from this loss from the Boston Celtics?
I mean, right now, like you think on paper, this is one of those things where you say to yourself, the Sixers should get this. Miami's coming in with a 4-game losing streak. The 76ers, they need a nice little bounce back game. Miami has some players who are banged up. So you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, the Sixers should get this. But then again, it's like you can't take them lightly, right? You just can't, because, Miami, like you said, the stuff that Jimmy Butler said, Miami's going to be fired up. But at the same time, and then last year, Miami was just a bad matchup for the 76ers. Now you incorporate Kevin Love in there, who's projected to start, right? And, start at the power forward spot. So, I think that's going to be a formidable front line of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kevin Love. Then you got Tyler Hero at the 2 guard and Gabe Vincent, who's been a guy who, let's face it, who's had a lot of success against the 76ers. So, it's one of these games where I expect the Sixers to win. I expect them to take care of business, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they lost to this Miami team while the Sixers are battling to be a top 3 team, this team is battling to not play in the play-in tournament. So it could be a tough 2-game series for the Sixers starting tonight.
32-29 are the Miami Heat, losing to Milwaukee, their first game back from the All-Star break. They got taken down in that one, blown out by Milwaukee. And you mentioned that you felt like, the matchup is a tough one. I always looked at the Miami Heat and thought that this was a favorable matchup for the Sixers. And that's why when they went into the postseason in that second round, even though Miami was the number 1 team record-wise, I felt like they were in a good spot against Miami, that they can advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. Unfortunately, the Embiid injury played a big part into it. James Harden, those final 2 games didn't play well, and we know that they were eliminated from the postseason. But that being said, I still do think the Sixers are a much better team. The record states that they are 8 games better than them in the standings right now in the East. And as you pointed out, Miami has some things to figure out. Kyle Lowry is still out with the injury. Gabe Vincent has had some career games against the Sixers. Cannot deny that. And also with Tyler Hero, what he's able to do. I look at this one, man, and they should beat this team tonight. I don't know about Wednesday. We'll get to Wednesday when we get to Wednesday. But as far as this one against this Miami Heat team tonight, they should be angry with how things ended on Monday, on Saturday, and take it out on this Miami Heat team tonight at the Center for the end of this homestand that they are currently on. So I look at this one as a game they should win, a game that they will win. But they cannot, again, take this team lightly. They need to be angry and show it. And if they get up on a big lead on them, hold it because of how things drop against the Boston Celtics. Show who you really are. Or maybe you already did. But against this team, they need to make sure that they take care of business against this Miami Heat squad. They are not, as the Sixers, to your point, and maybe even others last season when Miami was at the top of the conference, looking at the Sixers and saying they're not on their level. Right now, the Miami Heat are not on the Sixers level, and they need to make sure that they show it. Otherwise, of course, how it plays out, but this would be a bad loss for the team tonight at the center, Keith. But we'll find out. We shall find out. That's why they tip off and throw the ball up, tip off Embiid versus Adebayo on that jump and see what happens. And we thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. For our next episode, we'll recap this game against Miami and look ahead to the next one on Wednesday for the second part of the home and home. Now, make your second listen Locked On NBA, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Hey, maybe we'll be talking about Will Barton finding his way somewhere else. Real fast, Keith. Quinn Snyder, Atlanta. It's a good move.
Yeah, good luck, bro.
That's a good move.
At least he got 5 years out the deal. He should
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. He'll be around.
Keep getting these contracts, man. Keep getting these contracts. He's a good coach, though. I like Quinn Snyder. All right. Keith, you mind letting the good folks know where they can find us?
Like my man D said, wherever you get your podcast at, you can get this podcast. But when you go to our YouTube channel, make sure you go to our YouTube channel. You get that podcast and you click on the Liberty Bell, and then you'll be alerted whenever we have a new podcast. Tonight on 97.5 FM, you can listen to my man D from 6 p.m. to midnight. Now, don't feel bad for him, because what he's going to do is he's going to do the 6 p.m. from 7, right? Going into the pregame, and then after the game, he's going to do the postgame. So don't feel bad like, dang, they got my man working overtime. I mean, he's working.
It's a long night.
Yeah, it's going a long night, but don't, feel bad. He's going to get a little break. But so also listen to D. And then also what you can do is, especially during the game, follow him on Twitter. See what he's saying, what type of commentary he has to say and things like that at Devon G975. You can follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. And you can read my stuff in the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com.
All right, Keith, enjoy the game tonight, man. And we'll get back together tomorrow and break this one down of what we saw on Monday against the Miami Heat. Thank you. Thanks to all the viewers and the listeners out there. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.